Hi, today I'm going to give a quick overview of using the Talis Aspire reading list system for staff. So this isn't something that students need to know about. In terms of background, the university has bought this new system. It's a system called Aspire, made by the company Talis, so sometimes it'll be referred to as Talis Aspire or Aspire Reading List. And we're hoping that it'll make things easier for staff. It'll integrate, and for students. It'll integrate better with our systems than what we had before, and hopefully save a lot of time as well. For example, in the past, an academic would have to create reading lists of material to support a module, pass that on perhaps to an administrator to add to ARMS. Possibly they or someone else would have to upload it to Blackboard. They would probably check stock on Primo, have to do a book order for those items. Well, we're hoping that with the new system, you will create the list on Aspire and pretty much done. Most of those other things should happen automatically as a result of it, certainly once it's become more established. So let's have a look. This is the site. It's available now. As with most Aberystwyth University naming conventions, the address is just aspire.aber.ac.uk. And once I get here, I need to sign in the top right. So let's bring up my profile. Here we go. I'm now signed in as Carl Drinkwater. Now, when you first sign in, you need to create a profile. So instead of this line here, it will say something like create profile, and you'll click on that, and it will take you through to, I just click edit there, to a screen here, like this. So you'll need to enter your name and your university email address, choose what you want to describe yourself as, and choose your discipline. Unfortunately, we've not selected these. They come with the package, and we realise that they don't, at the moment, reflect exactly what we teach, but just choose the nearest thing. And then you'll probably want to make your profile public. The difference is that if it's public, students can search for your name if they've forgotten the module name or the module code, and bring up all the lists connected with you and find lists that way. So make your profile public and save the profile. And then you've got a profile, and you can start doing other things with the system. Now, first of all, I should explain the main options up here. You won't see as many options as I've got. Some of these options I have here as a sort of administrator of the system. You'll have a simpler screen. Let's go back home. But before I go into that, I'll just show you what a reading list actually looks like within this system here. So let me bring one up. In this case, I'll start typing in the name of the module, and there's a list attached to it, so I can click on that. I could have also typed in the lecturer's name or keywords from the module. So we've got a list here. It runs in semester 2. We know who's created it and their profile. Over on the right hand side, we can see when it was created and updated, and that's quite handy for being able to tell if a list hasn't been updated for 5 years, for example. It could be out of date. And then going down, we've got a list of items here, and any of the ones that I think might be useful, if I click on it. If it was an article, then it will take me through to this screen here where I can then click on @aber to get through to the article. And if it was a book, it would tell me more about it and what copies we've got in library stock. As a user of the list, I can choose reading intentions. I can say that this is something I will read, I have read, I don't intend to read it. I can also add notes on items. This is only visible to the person that adds the note, but a student could add their thoughts on what they've read so far, which bit's the most relevant to their essay, for example, and those get added. So this is what a student will see, and there are some nice options that could become useful later. For example, view bibliography. Shows it in bibliographic format based on the style that I'm interested in, that I use in my department. There we go, so you can just change it like that. So fewer excuses for not having a perfect bibliography there for students. Let's go back to the list. Now also, for the person that runs this list, they'll have an option to go into the dashboard area. So students will not see this. And the dashboard could become useful over time for seeing how many people have viewed that list, how many click-throughs on items there have been, details such as how many people have marked this item as they will read it, how many people are reading it at the moment. So that could all be useful in the future. It's anonymous, so it's impossible, although you can see that a certain number of students are reading the item or have marked it as not read or have made notes on it. That's anonymous. You won't know which students that applies to. It's just aggregated data. But the dashboard could be really useful. Okay, let's exit the dashboard there. So that's what lists look like in this system. I've already said that we're going to hopefully integrate them better with all our other systems. So for example, once, I think sometime after Christmas, we'll set it up so that the lists also automatically go into the module in Blackboard. That's not currently in place. We're looking at the options for how to do that, the best way of doing it. But an example of how it could look is if I go into this module here, scroll down, just give it a few seconds to load. Here we go. So a list is now showing up in Blackboard. It tells me whether it's a book or a web resource or an article. The green dot means that there's copies available in the library, and I could click on the item to go through to the Primo record. There we go. So as you can see, it also integrates with Primo as well as with Blackboard. So that should be a nice feature once that goes live. We're not yet sure exactly where it will go in the Blackboard module. There's a few options there, and we'll identify which is the best one. So that's looking at the list. Let's go back to Aspire. Now, at the top, we've got two options in the menu that you would have: My Lists and My Bookmarks. My Lists is all of the reading lists themselves. They will get, as you create them, they will get included under that option, and then you can go in, edit them, make changes, make copies, archive them, and so on. My Bookmarks refers to the actual resources. The terminology is a bit confusing because bookmarks has many meanings, and here the system is referring to almost references, links to a resource, whether it's a book, a website, a video on YouTube, a journal article, a chapter of a book. They're all referred to as bookmarks by Aspire, so you'll soon get used to that. I think of the My Bookmarks option as being a large box full of references, and over time you'll put more in, and then you can use those to populate the list that you create. Doesn't matter what order you do it in. When you first come here, you could start adding bookmarks, lists of references, or you could create a list, or you can go back and forth between the two. Doesn't really matter. If I go to My Lists, go start with creating a list, and then it should tell me that I don't have any here. That's fine. I'm going to create a new list. So for the list name, we recommend that you type in the module code and then the name of the module. Type in a description. Then you'll go to Select Hierarchy. And this is where you'll click on the module, and as you can see, it's added it. It's basically, this is a way of connecting the list you create in Aspire to the actual module that exists on our other systems. And you can add more than one module if you've got the same list applying to multiple modules. I'm going to cancel, but you click Save. Then choose whether it's semester 1 or 2, and in the near future we should be adding the feature for modules that run across both semesters, thin modules. That's something that doesn't come out of the box, but we know that that's needed. And then the anticipated student numbers. That's important because that will affect the number of copies of books that we order. For further reading items, it might only be one copy of each book. This is just an example. But for essential readings, there'll be a number of copies based on the number of students, and also whether there's an electronic book available for that title. So what I'll do, I'll actually call this test. I won't give it a description, just so that I can create a test list that I can then add to when I demonstrate. So create list. Am I the owner of the list? If I'm the person that runs the module, I'm fully in charge of it, then I'll choose I am the list owner. Otherwise, it's fine to choose decide later. In this case, I am the list owner. So I've got the list set up. Unfortunately, over here, I've got no resources to put in because I've yet to create any bookmarks. That's fine. I'll save the draft of this list, and let's have a look at how we actually add resources. So I've got an empty list, but it's ready for things. So I'll go to my bookmarks. I don't have anything already there. There's multiple ways of adding a resource, and I think what I'll do is I'll begin with the bookmarklet, which is the main way of doing it, and then I'll show you how you can also manually add resources. So basically there's all sorts of options for adding resources to this. So I'm going to click on Bookmarklet Installation Tutorial. A bookmarklet is a kind of shortcut in your browser's favorites, which runs a small script that does something. In this case, what the bookmarklet does is something called screen scraping, where it will then look at the record you've got up on the screen, and if it's got things such as DOIs or an ISBN, a title, an author, it will hopefully recognize those fields and then fill them in for you as in the reference, so it can save quite a bit of time. So I'm using Chrome. I'm just going to drag that up to my shortcuts up there. I'm going to rename it because by default it's called Add to My Bookmarks, which is a bit meaningless to me. So I'm going to rename it as Add to Aspire. This works whether you're using Internet Explorer or Firefox or Chrome, it really doesn't matter. Now, when I created a profile at the start, that's something I only need to ever do once. The bookmarklets, I'll need to do it once on each computer that I use, and obviously if I ever reinstall the operating system or use a completely new browser, I'll need to add the bookmarklet again. But generally, once you've done this, you probably won't need to worry about it. But as you can see, it was really straightforward to do. So what happens now? Let's go to Primo, and I'm going to search for a book. It would help if I could spell. Here we go. Okay, so I've got a list of results here. Let me choose one of these books. I've got two versions of this. That'll probably be two different editions. And here we go. Yeah, so we've got a third edition from 1993 and the 9th edition, 2008. So this is the one I want to add. So I click on the title there, because at the moment there's two books on the screen. The system wouldn't know which one I wanted. I've now chosen the one I want. I can see that there's information there, such as an ISBN. So I click on the bookmarklet at the top, and then it will open Aspire for me. And on the right-hand side is the page that I've just come from, so I can see all the details. And on the left is the reference that will go in as my bookmark in Aspire. It's worked out that it's a book, it's got the title, it's got the authors, the date, and so on. Excellent. No problems at all. It's done that fine. So I can either create, and it will just get added to my list of bookmarks there, or because I've already created the list, I can even create and add to list. And then I'll get a list, a drop-down list of all the reading lists, overuse of the word list there, all the reading lists that I'm in charge of. I can tell it to add it to the top or the bottom. If I had sections, I could tell it which section to add. I could add a note for the student, perhaps informing them of how to best use that resource. For example, beware of bias in chapter 3, or pay careful attention to whatever. Importance, I need to choose either essential or further reading. It's very important to do that because that will affect the number of copies that we make available. And finally, a note for the library. So this will never be seen by the students, but for example, maybe you don't want us to order the most recent edition of a book. The reading list, it's very specific, perhaps for some reason that you want an older edition. Anything like that, you can just add a note and only the library will see that. And then click OK. And then that not only has been saved into my bookmarks, in fact, it's easy to check this. Let's go into my bookmarks in Aspire. And there we go. As you can see, I've now got something added. If I go into my lists, and then click on this list, as you can see, it's added that book to there. So the bookmarklet is a really quick and easy way to save typing in authors and references. If you can find the thing in Primo, that's obviously going to be a really good way of doing it. But the screen scraping, which is what this bookmarklet does, will work on a lot of other resources and databases. It sometimes has trouble with PDFs, pulling out the fields, but if I just demonstrate, this is a database, PsycArticles. Let's bring up some articles on facial recognition. Got a list of results here. Let's just click on this one because I like the word orbitofrontal cortex. If I scroll down, at the very bottom, I've got all these details, the kind of things that the bookmarklet needs, such as a DOI and authors and titles. So I'm going to click on Add to Aspire. And here we go again. On the right-hand side is the preview of the resource that I'm putting into Aspire. And it's worked out that it's an article. It knows the title of the article, the author, page number, and so on. And also that it's part of the journal Neuropsychology, and there's the details for that. Perfect reference. Fine, I'll create that. So that was one created from PsycArticles. Just as another example, here's Science Direct. Let's find an article about memory. So, unfortunately for these records, I don't have access to the full text. For this one I do. You can still add the reference, that's not a problem at all. In this case, I'll just stick to one that we do have access to. So, from the Neurobiology of Learning and Memory, there's various bits of information on the screen. That should be good to try. Let's add to Aspire. Here we go. Preview on the left. Got the title, yeah, authors, page numbers, part of the journal. Perfect. I'll create that. So, when I go back to my bookmarks in Aspire, there should be now 3 items. We've got 2 articles and a book. As you can see, they were really easy to add. I can also add references manually. So I'm going to click on Add Bookmark, Add Manually. And then there's a number of options here. An easy one is if I know the DOI for an article. Here's one I prepared earlier. I can paste it in, look up, and it's found really quickly the correct article for me. Brilliant. Let's create that. So DOIs are a nice shortcut for adding articles. The same way, I can add manually, change the lookup box to ISBN, paste in an ISBN, click on lookup, and here we go, Psychology, the Science of Mind and Behaviour. Perfect. Now, that's added a reference for a whole book, and I can click Create, no problem. In some cases, you might want to refer students to a particular chapter. So in that case, we're going to add a field, is part of, add. Then I can tell it that it's a chapter, maybe in this case, chapter 3, memory. I'm making it up, I don't know what chapter 3 is. But then I can create that. What's excuse me, what's happened there is that I've added specifically a reference to a chapter in that book. So that was really easy to do as well. If I want to fully add a manual reference, then I tell it what kind of thing the reference is. An article, for example, can type in the name of the article. Then I'll need to add fields here. So we need to have an author field. So I click that. Maybe there's a second author, so I'll add another field. Let's add the pages from and to, or a single page number. So you can create the fields that you need for your reference, and really straightforward. Do it like that. Let's go back to my lists. So I've got this test list, which currently only has one item in. Let's click on Edit this list. Over on the right hand side now, you can see I've got more items to choose from, and I can click on the drag bar and pull references in and add them to the list that way. So over time you build up your bank of resources. The find box is really nice because you only have to start typing the first few letters of a word, and it will limit the results to the ones that match. So as that list gets longer and longer, it actually doesn't get any harder to deal with. So I've added some things here. I've also got the option to, for example, add sections. So in this case, I'm going to add a section. So you can use this to group resources together in the list in whatever way makes most sense to the way that you're teaching the module. So for example, I could choose to divide the list up by topic and put items together relating to the topic. I could do it by essay title. I could do it even by the week of the course. I can add a note to the students telling them what to pay attention to. So in week 1, I want them to have a look at these resources. In this case, I'm going to add week 2, and this can go into week 2. So as you can see, it's quite easy to organize material. And if I decided that I wanted a resource to be in more than 1 week, that's no problem at all. You can have things appear twice. So now this book, Psychology by Carol Wade, appears in week 1 and week 2. I suppose, for example, if I had essay titles, some resources would be useful to more than one essay. Then once it's in here, I need to set the importance of the item as whether it's essential reading or further reading. I could also do that through the link that says Edit Notes and Importance. There's the importance again, but this is where I can also add notes for the library or for the student. So there we go, I'll save that. And I've got a list with items for week 1 and week 2. So that's really nice and straightforward. From the page of lists, I can also do things such as make a copy of a list. So I'll give it a name, assign it as before. I'll just create a copy there. So back to my list, I should now have 2 lists, one called test and one called copy of test. Obviously I'd rename it and change the details and the module it's connected to. But just as an example, you might have one list that forms the basis of others. Say you have to recreate it each time, you can then just make the appropriate changes to it. So we've added resources. We now understand how to use the bookmarks to store all of the references, how to create lists, how to add bookmarks to the lists. Really straightforward. I think that's probably all I need to cover. With that, you can go away and get started. If you have any questions, you can always get in touch with your subject librarian or email acastaff, ACASTAFF, at aber.ac.uk. We also have help guides available here on the Aspire self-paced training page, and that includes videos and PDFs, and over time we'll expand these or add them to the frequently asked questions. So hopefully that was useful, and thank you for listening.